When billionaire Richard Carlson was told his newborn daughter Emma was permanently blind, he believed the doctors without question. He never suspected his wife's personal physician was lying to steal his fortune until the night janitor noticed something impossible. Richard Carlson owned half the commercial real estate in Manhattan. His wife, Victoria, came from old money and controlled a pharmaceutical empire through her family. Together, they were one of the most powerful couples in New York. They had everything except the one thing they wanted most, a child. After years of trying, Victoria finally got pregnant. The pregnancy was difficult. She was bedridden for months, attended by her personal physician, Dr. Eleanor Vance. Dr. Vance had been Victoria's doctor for 10 years. She was trusted, respected, part of the family. When baby Emma was born, she was beautiful, perfect tiny fingers, soft dark hair. But something was wrong. Dr. Vance examined the baby privately, then delivered devastating news to Richard and Victoria. "I'm so sorry," Dr. Vance said, her face grave. Emma was born with a rare condition called labor congenital amaurosis. She's completely blind. There's no cure. Victoria collapsed into Richard's arms, sobbing. Richard stood frozen, staring at his daughter in the hospital bassinet. His perfect little girl would never see his face, never see a sunset, never see anything. Dr. Vance placed a gentle hand on Richard's shoulder. "I know this is devastating, but there are specialists who can help Emma live a full life. I've already contacted the best pediatric blindness center in Switzerland. They can take her immediately." "Switzerland," Richard said, his voice hollow. "It's the best facility in the world for blind children," Dr. Vance explained. "They'll provide round-the-clock care, specialized therapy, everything Emma needs. She'll be in expert hands." Victoria looked up, tears streaming down her face. How long would she be there? At least 2 years for the initial intensive therapy, possibly longer. Richard felt his world crumbling. Send his newborn daughter away for years? But if it was what she needed, the cost is significant, Dr. Vance continued. About $3 million annually. But for Emma's future, it's worth every penny. Richard didn't hesitate. Money doesn't matter. Whatever she needs. Within a week, Emma was sent to the Swiss facility. Richard and Victoria were told they could only visit once every 3 months. Too much disruption would interfere with the therapy. They could video call twice a week, but Emma couldn't respond. She was just a baby, blind and far away. Richard threw himself into work. It was the only thing that kept him from falling apart. Victoria spiraled into depression, spending days in bed, taking pills prescribed by Dr. Vance. 6 months passed. Richard felt like a ghost in his own life. Every night, he walked through the nursery they prepared for Emma, the crib that was never used, the toys she'd never play with, the mobile that hung still and silent above an empty room. One night, Richard was working late in his office, a private suite on the top floor of one of his buildings. It was past midnight. The building was empty except for the overnight cleaning crew. Richard stood at the window, staring at the city lights, thinking about Emma, wondering if she was sleeping peacefully in Switzerland, wondering if she even knew she had parents who loved her. He heard a knock at his door. Strange. No one should be on this floor. He opened the door. It was Samuel, one of the night janitors, an older black man who'd worked in the building for 20 years. Samuel looked nervous. "Mr. Carlson, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's something you need to see." "What is it, Samuel?" Samuel pulled out his phone. "I was cleaning Dr. Vance's office tonight. She left her computer on. I saw something wrong." He showed Richard the screen. It was an email from Dr. Vance to someone named Marcus Chun. The email read, "Another payment received. $1.5 million transferred to offshore account. The Carlson baby is perfect, completely healthy. Parents still believe the blindness diagnosis. Continue monthly reports from Switzerland facility. They suspect nothing. Richard's blood went cold. He read it again. And again. The Carlson baby is perfect, completely healthy. His daughter wasn't blind. Richard stood frozen, staring at Samuel's phone. His mind couldn't process what he was reading. "This can't be real," Richard whispered. "I'm sorry, Mr. Carlson," Samuel said quietly, "but I think your daughter's been kidnapped." Richard's legs nearly gave out. He grabbed the edge of his desk. "Kidnapped? Where is she?" "I don't know, but that email mentions monthly reports from a fake facility." "Sir, I don't think she's in Switzerland at all." Richard's heart pounded. His baby girl. His Emma. She wasn't blind. She'd never been blind. Dr. Vance had lied. Had stolen her. Was probably selling her, or worse. "We need to call the police," Richard said, reaching for his phone. Samuel grabbed his arm. "Mr. Carlson, wait. If Dr. Vance finds out we know, she might disappear. Or hurt Emma. We need proof first. Real proof." Richard wanted to scream. Wanted to tear the building apart. But Samuel was right. They needed to be smart. "What do we do?" Richard asked, his voice breaking. "Let me look through more of her files," Samuel said. "I'll find something. An address. A contact. Something that tells us where Emma really is." Richard nodded, his hand shaking. "Do it. I'll keep Dr. Vance distracted." Samuel left. Richard paced his office, his mind racing. How had he not seen this? How had he trusted Dr. Vance so completely? He thought about all the video calls with the facility in Switzerland. A woman in a white coat, always the same woman, holding a baby and saying, "Emma's doing well. She's adjusting to therapy." But the baby's face was always turned away from the camera. Richard had assumed it was because Emma couldn't see them anyway. Now he realized it wasn't Emma at all. Richard felt sick. For 6 months, he believed his daughter was blind and getting help. In reality, she'd been stolen. God only knew where she was or what was happening to her. He couldn't tell Victoria. Not yet. She was already so fragile. This news might destroy her. Richard forced himself to go home and act normal. He found Victoria in the living room, staring at a photo of Emma from the hospital. "I miss her," Victoria whispered. "I know she's getting the help she needs, but I miss her so much." Richard sat beside his wife, wrapping his arm around her. "I miss her too. Dr. Vance called today," Victoria said. "She said Emma's making progress. That maybe in another year she can come home. Another year. Another year of paying Dr. Vance millions of dollars. Another year of his daughter being held somewhere by criminals." Richard clenched his jaw. "That's good news." "Is it?" Victoria looked at him with hollow eyes. "I feel like I'm losing my mind, Richard. I gave birth to a daughter I'll never really know. She'll never see my face. Never know what I look like. She'll know you love her," Richard said, fighting back tears. "That's what matters." But even as he said it, rage burned inside him. Dr. Vance had taken everything from them. Their daughter. Their joy. Their hope. The next night, Samuel came to Richard's office again. This time, he brought a folder. "I found something," Samuel said, spreading papers across Richard's desk. Bank transfers, shell companies, and an address in upstate New York. Richard grabbed the address. "Is this where Emma is?" "I think so. Look at this." Samuel pointed to an email. "Dr. Vance sent this 2 days ago. Baby continues to thrive. We'll arrange next payment after monthly inspection." The email was sent to someone at this address. Richard's heart raced. "I'm going there. Tonight. Mr. Carlson, you should call the police." "No police. Not until I know Emma's safe." Richard grabbed his car keys. "If Dr. Vance gets wind of this, she'll run, and we might never find Emma." Samuel looked worried. "Then I'm coming with you." "Samuel, you don't have to." "Mr. Carlson, with respect, you need someone who knows what's really going on. Let me help. Richard looked at this man, this janitor who'd risked his job to tell him the truth, this stranger who cared more about Emma than the doctor they'd trusted for years. Thank you, Samuel, Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. They drove through the night, 2 hours north to a rural address in the mountains. When they arrived, it was a small house, isolated and dark. Richard's hands shook as he approached the front door. Was his daughter inside? Was she safe? Alive? He knocked. No answer. He knocked again, harder. The door opened. A young woman stood there, holding a baby with dark hair and tiny fingers. Emma. Richard's breath caught. His daughter. Right there. 6 months old now. Awake and alert. And her eyes, her beautiful brown eyes, tracked his movement. She wasn't blind. She'd never been blind. Who are you? The woman asked, holding Emma protectively. I'm Richard Carlson, he said, his voice shaking. That's my daughter. The woman's face went pale. She stepped back. I don't know what you're talking about. Please, Richard said, tears streaming down his face. That's my baby. Her name is Emma. She was stolen from me 6 months ago. The woman looked terrified. Dr. Van said she told me this baby was orphaned, that I was fostering her until she found adoptive parents. Richard's jaw clenched. Another lie, another manipulation. She lied to you, just like she lied to me. Samuel stepped forward, showing the woman his phone. We have proof, emails, bank transfers. Dr. Vance has been stealing from Mr. Carlson and lying about his daughter's condition. The woman stared at the evidence, her hands trembling. Oh, my God, I had no idea. I thought I was helping. Can I hold her? Richard asked, his voice breaking. Please, I haven't held my daughter in 6 months. The woman hesitated, then slowly handed Emma over. Richard took his daughter in his arms, and the world stopped. She was warm, healthy, beautiful. Her eyes looked right at him, seeing him perfectly. Hi, baby girl, Richard whispered, tears falling onto Emma's blanket. Daddy's here. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Emma made a small sound, her tiny hand reaching up toward his face. She could see him. She'd always been able to see. Samuel called the police. Within an hour, squad cars surrounded the house. The woman, whose name was Karen, told them everything she knew. Dr. Vance had paid her $50,000 to foster Emma, claiming the baby was an orphan from a teen mother who couldn't care for her. Karen had believed her, had cared for Emma like she was her own. She broke down crying when she realized she'd been part of a kidnapping scheme. I would never hurt a child, Karen sobbed to the officers. I thought I was doing something good. The police arrested her, but Richard could see she was a victim too. Another person Dr. Vance had manipulated. The police immediately issued a warrant for Dr. Vance's arrest. They tracked her to JFK Airport. She was trying to flee to the Cayman Islands with millions of dollars in stolen money. She was arrested at the gate, her designer luggage filled with cash and fake passports. When they brought her in for questioning, Richard was there. He stood behind the one-way glass, watching her sit in the interrogation room, still wearing her expensive clothes and jewelry, all bought with his money. The detective asked, "Why did you do it, Dr. Vance?" Dr. Vance's mask of professionalism finally cracked. Do you know what it's like to watch people like the Carlsons have everything? Money, power, influence. They don't even appreciate it. So you stole their child? The detective asked. I gave them a story they believe, Dr. Vance said coldly. Rich people always believe experts. They trust doctors. They don't ask questions. And the fake facility in Switzerland? A few actors, some stage video calls. Easy. Dr. Vance leaned back in her chair. I would have gotten away with it, too. They were so desperate to believe their daughter was getting help. They never questioned anything. Richard felt rage boiling inside him. This woman had stolen his daughter, had made him believe Emma was blind, had taken millions of dollars and felt no remorse. The detective showed her the email Samuel had found. You made one mistake. You left your computer unlocked. A janitor saw everything. For the first time, Dr. Vance looked shaken. A janitor? Samuel Moore, the detective said. He's the reason we caught you. Dr. Vance's face twisted with anger and disbelief. Undone by someone she'd probably never even noticed. Someone invisible to people like her. Richard left the police station. He didn't need to see any more. Dr. Vance would go to prison for a long time. Kidnapping, fraud, extortion. She'd spend the rest of her life paying for what she'd done. But Richard didn't care about revenge anymore. He just wanted to go home to his daughter. He found Samuel in the waiting area. "Thank you," Richard said, shaking his hand. "You saved my daughter's life. I can never repay you." Samuel smiled gently. "You don't need to repay me, Mr. Carlson. I just did what was right." "You did more than what was right," Richard said. "You gave me my daughter back." The next few weeks were a blur of emotions. Richard and Victoria brought Emma home. They set up her nursery again. This time, Emma actually slept in the crib, played with the toys, watched the mobile spin above her head with wide, seeing eyes. Victoria couldn't stop crying, happy tears this time. She held Emma for hours, staring at her daughter's face, watching her eyes track movement and light. "She can see," Victoria whispered over and over. "She can really see." The doctors confirmed it. Emma was perfectly healthy. No vision problems. No developmental delays. She was a normal, beautiful 6-month-old baby. Richard couldn't stop thinking about Samuel, about how a man he barely knew, a janitor he'd probably passed in the hallway 100 times without really seeing, had saved his entire world. He called Samuel and asked him to come to his home. When Samuel arrived, Richard led him into the living room where Victoria sat holding Emma. "Samuel, this is my wife, Victoria. And this is Emma, thanks to you." Victoria stood up, tears in her eyes. "Thank you. Thank you for bringing our daughter home." Samuel smiled warmly. "I'm just glad she's safe." "It's more than that," Richard said. "You risked everything to tell me the truth. You could have looked the other way. Most people would have." "I couldn't do that," Samuel said. "When I saw that email, I kept thinking, what if that was my daughter, my granddaughter? I'd want someone to speak up." Richard pulled out an envelope. "I want to give you something. It's not payment. You can't put a price on what you did, but I want to help you the way you helped me." Inside the envelope was a check for $500,000. Samuel's eyes widened. "Mr. Carlson, I can't accept this." "Please," Richard said. "You gave me back my daughter. Let me give you a better future. Retire, travel, help your family. Whatever you want." Samuel stared at the check, tears forming in his eyes. "I've worked as a janitor for 30 years. I've never had more than a few $1,000s in my account. You deserve this," Victoria said softly. "You're a hero, Samuel." Samuel accepted the check with shaking hands. "Thank you. God bless you both." But Richard wasn't done. Over the next few months, he made sure Samuel and his family were taken care of. He paid off Samuel's mortgage, set up college funds for Samuel's grandchildren, gave him a position on the board of his charitable foundation, a real position with real influence. "You have a voice that matters," Richard told Samuel. "You see things other people miss. I need that perspective." Samuel became more than an employee. He became a friend, a trusted advisor, someone Richard valued not for what he could do for Richard, but for who he was. Dr. Vance was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Karen, the woman who'd unknowingly fostered Emma, received probation and community service. The judge recognized she'd been manipulated too. Richard and Victoria started a foundation to help families who've been victims of medical fraud. They used their wealth and influence to create laws protecting vulnerable patients and families. Emma grew up healthy and happy. She learned to walk, to talk, to see the world in all its beauty. And she grew up knowing about Samuel, the man who'd saved her life when she was just a baby. On Emma's 5th birthday, Samuel came to her party. She ran up to him and hugged his legs. "Grandpa Samuel," she called him, even though they weren't related by blood. Samuel picked her up and spun her around. "Happy birthday, little one." Richard watched them, his heart full. He thought about how close he'd come to losing Emma, how one man's courage had changed everything. That night, after Emma was asleep, Richard stood in her doorway, watching her breathe peacefully in her bed. Victoria came up beside him and took his hand. "We're so lucky," she whispered. "We are," Richard agreed. "But it's more than luck. It's because one good person chose to speak up." Richard thought about Dr. Vance, sitting in a prison cell, having lost everything because of her greed. He thought about how wealth and power hadn't protected him. Humility and human decency had. He'd learned that the most important people aren't always the ones with the biggest titles or the most money. Sometimes they're the ones quietly working the background, seeing what others miss, and having the courage to do what's right. Emma stirred in her sleep, her eyes moving beneath her eyelids, dreaming, seeing, alive. And Richard understood something beautiful. Sometimes the people who save you aren't the ones you expect. They're not the experts you trust or the friends you've known forever. Sometimes they're strangers who simply choose kindness over silence. And that choice, that simple, brave choice, can change everything. Because the greatest power in the world isn't money or status. It's the courage to tell the truth when everyone else stays quiet. That's the kind of strength that saves lives. And that's the kind of justice that lasts forever.